morning.
Morning.
Morning. Got your coffee?
I have got my coffee.
That is the big cup. Goodness me.
You know I love big cups. I cannot lie.
So welcome everyone today to the Small Business Chat with me and Christelle. And today you'll notice that I'm now starting it off and introducing the chat. And this is because today we are talking all about PR. And of course, Christelle is the expert in PR. So we're going to be chatting to all about PR and kind of what, I think there's kind of an old school thing of how people perceive what PR is about, or a lot of people don't understand what PR is about. So we're going to strip that back, but also I think show how PR has really evolved and diversified and become more of a communication strategy tool, marketing tool as well. It's not just, public relations as it was once called.
Well, you're right, actually. They have the, I've got to say, just jumping in very quickly, because of course it's me, I like to talk. This is why it's called Small Business Chat. But one of the key points you've mentioned there is that everyone wants the fast shortcut to business success. So they will look at, and this goes across any type of business activity that you're doing, from your branding, from your website design to even PR activity. And the shortcut is, where's the results? And the most tangible results that we've seen over the year is media coverage. But actually, it's so much broader than that. And some of the hard work in order to make that media coverage and that spotlight shine on you and actually make your business last is actually behind the scenes. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. Actually, it has, I think last year it's really evolved in the sense that if you had actually invested in PR in the sense that it was meant to be invested in, and you've done your comms, and you don't even have to hire a PR for this. This is the beauty of it. You can do this yourself, folks. And from a small business perspective, it's making sure that you're aware of how you include this in your strategy for your business to make sure that your comms is really aligned and it's strong, and there is that sense of purpose and leadership throughout your activity and driving your business forward.
Yeah, I think for some people, though, it's all about, they need to demystify it a bit as well, and people just don't understand. Some people don't even know where to start. So hopefully in this in the Small Business Chat, we'll kind of go through the ways with you, ask some questions, but also I know that there's ways that you can really help people, just give them that kickstart to work with them. So we'll cover that at the end. So what are the 5 ways then in which PR can future-proof your business?
Well, let's actually, what you've just said was really interesting. Let's just strip it back. Like, what is PR? And it is actually about reputation. That's the official definition of PR. It's about your reputation, what you do, what you say, and what other people say about you. Now, why is that really important? And isn't that all about image? Well, actually, no. If you think about it, and this is why I love brand communications. What is the essence of who you are as a brand? What do you stand for? What are your values? And making sure that when you're building your reputation, that those values and that brand messaging is being communicated out so that everyone knows straight away what you stand for, what you deliver, and what your mission is. And I think the reason why we sometimes overlook that is because when it comes to building reputation, it also means building relationships. And again, can be quite time consuming. You think about social media and trying to build a community on social media and having to comment on everyone. That's the same thing online and offline, is about building relationships. And again, as humans, we're so busy that sometimes we've forgotten the art of actually building those relationships. Why are relationships important? They build referrals. I think that's the value of it, isn't it? That word of mouth is so powerful. And I don't know anyone, most of the business owners that I speak to, when I ask them what's been your biggest driver for your business, be word of mouth or networking. Like, that's the first core. So actually, great point. Let's just strip back to really bringing it back to basics. What can you be doing in your business? And I think that the 5 ways that I would like to sort of highlight is, firstly, value of comms. So I think that somewhere along the line, as a business owner, we're juggling so much that we actually forget to communicate. And I had, there's a wonderful client I used to work with. It's a coffee shop brand, and they've just done an amazing talk about their team building. And again, you might think, well, that's HR. that HR is great for getting the structures in place, but the actual relationship build, that's also HR and PR. That's making sure that when you're going through changes in your business, you're keeping them informed, you're showing them that they're valued, you're showing them that they are part of that process by communicating with them, sharing those ideas, feeding back to them. We forget that from an internal point of view. We've just been so busy from PR focusing on external that we've forgotten internal, we've forgotten about community, for example. And again, those are the two areas last year that if you did not do that properly, you really saw a gap in how you're going to shift your business along, move forwards. Because if you haven't got that following with you, it's really hard, isn't it, to then
definitely.
actually try and move forward and progress if you haven't got that backing of vitally your community and your teams. So I think for me, that's number one. I think definitely looking at more your internal and the value of comms, also the processes. I think as well, the practice of communicating, like it's important to be fast, responsive. It's really important to be informative. But I think as well, it's also about impact, not necessarily about noise. So again, everything that you're doing from a comms point of view, you're not just up, it's like asking somebody to come to yet another meeting just for meeting's sake. No, let's strip it back. What is it that we're trying to achieve and communicate here, and just do it clearly, and actually, rather than just make noise just for the sake of communicating with someone, making sure that the messages and the way that we're communicating, we've honed down that talent to make sure it's more effective.
I think that's a really good point. And it's when people are producing content, they feel as well, you have to produce content for the sake of producing content to be out there. But actually, is it better not to have good quality content, but less of it, rather than lots of content that is just not really making an impact? So yeah, from my point of view, I think that's really important to consider. It's like everything in life. It's sort of looking at something and thinking consciously about it or mindfully about it, and just going, what is this going to do? What is it going to achieve? Is it ticking off box A, B, C? Yes, okay, let's post it. If it's not, then rethink it and think, well, actually, I'll put that aside until, or come up with something else.
And actually, if we talk about reach, so again, where we'd focus more on internal and maybe smaller reach, which might go against a lot of, for a small business, this is really important, but for brands, it's all about like maximizing that reach, getting as many people focused. Well, then look at what happened last year. Influencers and influencer activity sort of went down for the big high profile influencers, and actually marketing budget was shifted towards those more micro influencers, yes, the ones with the smaller communities, because they knew that they would get more engagement out of that conversion or of that activity. So again, if you're, and I love like niche publications when I'm working in PR, again, if it's a particular subject title, it's not necessarily about trying to get the national as it was before. You can build up those relationships with those more curated audiences and those titles, and there are various channels to do that in. But like you say, it is making sure that you have a strategy behind it, making sure that there is a real flow and a solid flow of communication so that you're ready. And I think that was the other thing, is that people realized they didn't have this comms. Like all of a sudden you're scrambling to put on a WhatsApp channel for your teams, or we had to learn to work online, for example. But if you already had that power of communication, it would have been easier if you'd had that chain there. So I think that that's a really important aspect of comms, that again, I think that internal PR and internal comms has often been overlooked, because as far as the bosses are concerned, it might be, I'm the one that's making the decision, but you're forgetting who it's impacting.
Yeah, definitely.
So opening those channels up. And that goes on to tone, and that's the other second thing that I wanted to talk about being more human. And actually empathetic. And I know that you'd love this, but I think the tone, we've really had to look at the tone in how we're talking to our customers, through our comms, through our channels. I was quite interested listening to Clubhouse talking about, there was a conversation about using more humour and lightheartedness. And again, last year, I think the majority of my work was evaluating, is this sensitive? You know, is this the right time to be talking about this? Is this the right time to be promoting it in this way, or can we shift it in a different way to make sure that we're more sensitive? I mean, again, you look at tone, and a lot of it is about listening, and I think that we've really realized who isn't listening, who is being more reactive and human in their approach, and it's just more valued. Again, this is why local small businesses are doing well, because they've really thought, this is about my community. I'm going to listen to what my community needs. How can I go help them? You know, and it's really
good point.
Really stood up, hasn't it? Don't you think?
Yeah, you've seen a lot of that, you know, because what's come out of it is people are supporting more local and that. So, and I think those that didn't have that relationship with their local customers, you know, who would just sort of get people in the door, get people out the door, really suffered during lockdown and COVID. So I think that's a real good lesson to be learned, you know, to just really be empathetic and have compassion. Yeah.
Compassion, definitely. Connectivity is my big word. I think that has, if anything has broken through in terms of comms for me, it has been connection. So this is why I'm loving the platforms that are being more connected. I'm loving the campaigns. I'm also looking at anything where you're trying to be more connected in your audience building, and also for me, I think seeing brands being more sensitive, empathetic, like you say, really a high point. And then also the other thing that I would say where the PR value comes into place, and again, like I said, this is all the things that you could be doing yourself. I think that this is super important to understand it, so that when you, sometimes it might come across that it's common sense, but I think we see with businesses, common sense ain't that common.
No, and sometimes you need reminding, and then it's yeah, you know, you don't always think of that. You've got so much else to think about in your business and so many hats to wear that it's just, you know, you can't be an expert in everything. So even though it seems common sense, it just might not cross your radar until someone says something to you. So I think this is really, you know, what you're talking about here is really valuable to be telling people and sort of going, oh, okay, I get it now. You know what I mean? This is something, there are some things I can do, and there are some things that I probably need help with, but that's where people like you can come in and do that.
And I think, so what you mentioned is that we don't realise it until somebody's either pointed it out or when a crisis hits. And I think that is a real testament right there as to your strategic planning of how to manage a crisis. If something goes wrong, the best companies will have a crisis comms plan, or some sort of, right, we're on high alert, what do we need to do? How do we strip back? What do we need to review? Who's in charge of what? All these elements. If you're a solopreneur, then actually what's your checklist? We did this, didn't we? At our first chat, which spurned Small Business Chat, we went through our checklist of, okay, what is it as small business owners we need to do? Where do we need to communicate? Where do we need to be? What do we need to manage? And if you have that checklist of a crisis, of wherever that happens, and you update it and you review it as you go along, it just means you're prepared. Like that, it sounds daft, but it just means who's responsible for what if you have a small team, or at least where do you need to bring in the help? It might be that you,
I think so, yeah.
It might be that you need help with that plan, but you could do that in a session. You know, that again, you don't need to hire someone to actually make sure that you're crisis ready all the time. It's just having the plan in place. I think for me, if there's backlash, so from a PR perspective, we usually have the comms plan in place. If there is a media query or an issues management, how do we find out what the truth is? How do we find out what the statistics are, or, you know, where's the error? Like, what is it? What's the issue that needs to be fixed? Is it in our realm of responsibility or somebody else's? And what can we do to make sure that A, it's fixed, and B, that people are cared for and looked after, but also where we take responsibility so it never happens again. Now, obviously, when you have a pandemic, you can't do that. Like, this was outside of your control. However, if we were to really look at this and go, right, I think that this has opened up, again, every crisis will do this, it will open up your area of responsibility and what your commitment is to either your teams, your community, your customers, etc., or your industry. and whether or not you're going to step up. So again, it's really worth having that plan in place and just being a little bit more strategic in your planning, in your comms, to make sure that it's easier to update people than it is to suddenly create those new relationships during a time of stress, during a time of maybe when you're under pressure.
Yeah, definitely. I think, if there is the unfortunate thing that there is a crisis, say, like you say the wrong thing on social media, and then you get a barrage of comments, and discord. I think for a small business, it's really hard to know how to respond to that. And in that case, I would say definitely get someone who's got expertise and help to get them to help you manage that situation, because I think it's really difficult on your own. You're so close to your business, to sort of step back and go, oh my goodness, and I've seen this happen. Sort of a small business just said the wrong thing and it just went absolutely bonkers. And I was just like, oh my goodness, it's just like how one little thing that you can say can really backfire on you. So I think in those cases, definitely get the help in. Don't just sit on it and go, or run away or bury yourself in a hole. I think it's really important to be quick to respond and have someone like yourself, on the end of the phone that you can call and go, look, I need some help quick now.
Absolutely. I think you're right, actually. It's so easy how something can escalate. And also, you're not in control of that media. Like, you could have just done a podcast and then somebody might have edited it in a certain way that actually has no context to what you wanted to do. And now, next thing you know, that's out there. So actually, it's really important to have some sort of guideline into what you're doing, what the action is. And also, if something goes wrong, again, this is why I think creating our own channels has been, for me, a strategic value. It's of such strategic value. Like, where everyone's a publisher now, but also this is our platform to set the record straight. So again, from a marketing PR point of view, we look at all of the marketing channels and go, right, where are we disseminating that information through? Where does it go through? Where are we showing that information? Disseminating. That's the wrong word. Sorry, see, there you go. It happens. It's live. I'm saying a word, not enough coffee. But yeah, but from that point of view, I think that's where the strategy comes in place. The second, the fourth thing that I would say is driving change has been, and ethics and value has been such a consumer behavior focus that they want to invest in brands that are seen to be doing more than just sales. Like, there's, understanding what that purpose or that mission is. Again, it goes back to your branding, and I think this is why it's so aligned with whatever comms activity that you do. I think that the trust factor, the loyalty, the connection there is where, if you're communicating and showing that you're very much committed to helping others and driving change, that will actually be a key point of creating the right relationships for you to move your business forward, I feel. We've seen it in terms of diversity, we've seen it in terms of environmental issues. I think that definitely what comes across there is that, and again, we've talked about this, but that balance of people, planet and profit, which is why we love what we're doing, because we're able to help those businesses do that. And I think making sure that is core in your comms and your PR is absolutely key. And then that finally leads to the fifth point, and the way that I would say is vital for your reputation build, your relationship build, is stepping up and being your own leader. I think I love that synergy. I don't mean a leader as in you have to be the biggest,
run the country,
and run the country. David versus Goliath. David was a leader. Like, he was something that was doing something different. Again, you're able to make an impact no matter how. Look at I mean, I love that inspirational, the inspiration that Captain Sir Tom Moore gave us. It's like, you can just do the most smallest things, can't you? And I love that line from The Imitation Game. It's like, sometimes the most unbelievable people do the most unbelievable things, or something like that.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact quote, but I know what you mean.
And
you can, no matter,
unremarkable.
Yeah. And it's just, no matter how small, you know what I mean? I think sometimes you look over to other people and you go, oh, but I'm not, I don't have those sort of that expertise or the leadership quality like, those people. Oh, I can't be doing that or putting myself out there. You just got to focus on doing it in your own little way.
Even in your own family.
That little path. Yeah. I don't think don't compare yourself always to other people. I think is quite key, because that can make you retract more and become more introverted and move away from kind of really, showing people who you are and helping people who really need your help.
Absolutely. I always look at it, and I say this with everyone that's looking at their marketing, their PR, and even like their business. It's sort of like, look at your circles of influencers. If you just dropped there's a drop in a lake, and those circles expand out. And first look at your inner circle, and then expand out. And then the more that you can do, the more you build your business, the more that you can help people in the outer circles and the outer rings.
I've talked a lot about that sort of spheres of influence as well. And it's just, you can make much bigger impact with your sort of your local community, or your ideal clients, kind of from your core target market. If it comes to business, if you're trying to go global straight away, you're going to get frustrated because you just don't have the impact there that you have locally. So as you say, it's moving outwards like that. I love the ripple idea. That's great.
Well, I always try and bring in those elements of nature, like we do, don't we? But I think what you were saying about the global influence, it's harder to really get that connectivity and that trust. And I think that's one of the core values that we talked about. Like I did a post, and it was like, trust is going to be really key. And we've seen some of these mass media titles, for example, these bigger companies. It's been harder to, distrust has come up with a lot of them because they haven't done the work, or it's been very much, and it's a sad thing, because I personally think that the whole point of media, I've seen so much distrust around it, but for me the whole point is that media is really useful because it holds it holds governments to account. Like, that's what it's supposed to be there for. That's my core value of it. And I think that it's really important that we support some really good media titles out there, and we've seen a shift. We've seen, like, journalists have gone to create some amazing publications, like Positive News, for example, the Good News Movement, Talking Circle. Like, these are all run by journalists that perhaps have moved away from like clickbait, but actually want that quality journalism that we've been missing again. And again, that doesn't mean that trust is going to impact the media relations activity of PR, and that decline in trust. In fact, we're going to look at new ways and new channels, and maybe our own channels or other people's channels, in which to build that trust.
I think that's really important, though, what you say. A lot of people out there, journalists, who are seeking the truth and have the resources to do so, and yet there's such a mistrust of them, and people believe what they read on Facebook, or they link off to some blog from some fanatic who doesn't have those credentials, and believe that person over well-known journalists. So I think and this is where the whole conspiracy theories start coming in and everything as well, and I think it's really bad for society. I think you've got to, like you say, find good sources like that. I'll have to look those up, what you just mentioned, actually. And do your research, look a bit into it, check the facts, and I think it's really important.
I think the fake news sort of review, and making sure that we more considered readers will wonder where that data has come from. And in fact, even in your PR activity, it's not just about pitching the good story anymore. Where's the facts that back it up? Can you give me a little bit more about, I want to see a case study. I want to see statistics. If you tell me that this is a sellout product, by what percentage, So if you're a business owner, when you're putting these claims out and you're trying to show the value of what you do, again, from a trust perspective, you need to show, like, actually, how can I use an example, or how can I back this up with data? And so again, I'm a big lover of data, and and research into how that feeds into your campaigns and your comms. And that is definitely something that when I've been reading like marketing titles, they have been talking about it. Some going a little bit too far for me with AI, because I don't think we're quite there yet as in regular consumer. But for small businesses, I do think that data has become more and more important. So absolutely, I would value that.
Okay, so how do you think our need for community then will impact PR?
I think what we have said about stripping it back and actually deeper connections in our comms, I think that is going to be a real shift. I think that if anything, we've really seen that we just don't care about vanity metrics. I love the fact that we were just having this discussion about Instagram and sort of, you know, what channels we're on. Now, I've always used Instagram as more of a tribe building like strategy and a community, because I've loved the engagement. But I think that for a business owner, if you are looking at vanity metrics, if anything, I hope now it's taught you that it hasn't served any purpose if they're hollow vanity metrics. You know, it's not the best to be the you know, it's not the best to have the biggest social media following or the biggest email list if nobody is engaged with what you're saying, and you cannot shift that you know, that change. So I think that is, for me, the connection, and also that community. Smaller communities, I think, are going to work really, really well from building forwards. But again, you know, this is word of mouth. This is the trust. This is the loyalty.
Yeah, building up those sort of the loyal following, isn't it? Yeah. I think we've covered quite a lot of the other questions I was going to ask you sort of over the first 5, but is there anything, I know I want to talk about sort of to finish off sort of how people can work with you or find out more, but is there anything else that you wanted to cover off before?
No, I'm kind of looking at time, but yeah, I think, you know, that's given hopefully a really good overview as to how you as a business owner can use a PR mindset for your business, rather than just focus on the PR tactics in your marketing. I think that's the big switch that I would just love more people to understand, and that it can be done by yourself, because we are human. It is human to human. You know, it's public relations and it's relationships, but they require 2 sets of humans, like, you know, like as in 2 human beings creating that relationship, I should say. And if you are one and you have those, it is literally just how are we connecting better. And I think
maybe instead of PR, public relations is personal relationships.
I kind of like sit there and go power in relationships, like you know, PRs, like 3 Rs. I'm like thinking of ways of getting it through, but I know that for years we've always battled. We've got our worst image, you know, for an industry that deals in image and reputation. It's unclear, you know, it's diluted. You know, I'm not going to say, I think that it's really separated out, and I really do feel like the value of it. And I think that as we come into an age where we are becoming more human conscious and, you know, much more respective of human to human activity and being more human in business, then actually I think, you know, it's always stayed in the background, but like I said, it's not as common sense, or common sense isn't as common.
Yeah, I do remember going back when we first met and worked in travel, your presentation telling us all what is PR, and it was absolutely hilarious.
As in what the perception was?
I think so, yeah. And you sort of had I think it was sort of like illustrated figures, communicating.
Patsy from AbFab, you know, Samantha Jones from Sex and the City. I mean, at the time, you know, Max Clifford was seen as this PR guru, and it's like, oh my God, like, you know, and sort of like very publicist, sort of like Hollywood style. It's so, we need to do our own work on our own industry.
Yeah. But the one thing always stuck with me is how you explained it, was that it's what people say about you when you're not in the room.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it kind of differs from marketing, but now it's, as you say, it's so integrated. So I think that's been so valuable, and I hopefully to all of you watching the replay as well, that you get a huge amount of value out of that, because I learn from Christelle all the time, and we chat often, so I'm constantly learning from from her about this. I think it's some fantastic stuff to take away for your business. And I know there are going to be people who do need a bit of help. So I know you offer a discovery call. So can you just tell us a bit about that and how people can take that up?
Sure. So usually the conversation, I think I've got so tired of, can we meet for a coffee? And then me downloading everything into, you know, actually how your view of PR might be different. But a discovery call for me is, what is it that you're just trying to achieve in your marketing? And again, what are the steps that you could be doing? And actually, what's that marketing strategy? Sometimes you might need to do your own PR. Sometimes you might need to hire, you know, somebody to do it for you, or even you might need to, you know, invest in a really good website. So I kind of look at it from a PR mindset. What is it that, how does that drive your marketing? So the discovery call goes into, what is it that you actually want to achieve? The marketing clinic for me is, we can either just troubleshoot the ideas. If you're just stuck and you are sitting there thinking, I need to get moving, I don't know where to start, I just need someone to tell me like what would be the best thing to do for my budget, for the resources that I have and the time that I've got to do it in, what is the way that I could best move forward? That is 90 minutes troubleshooting, no sales. It is literally just solid advice and consultancy. And then if you actually need more a strategic plan as to how do we map this out for your business, so that over the year, what is it that you want to achieve and how can we get you there? But then also, what can we do in the first 3 months to get you moving? Then my strategy plan is a session that I also offer. It's all on my website. It's www.kvcoms.com.
Brilliant. So, yeah. And I know, because I've done some work with you on your the package, you know, sort of getting an idea and planning my content out and everything like that. And it's just super useful. I mean, you might have lots of ideas, but it's sometimes just getting, you know, rearranging it. And as you say, looking at it from a different perspective, having someone to brainstorm with and help you sort of plan it a bit better. So, you know, I definitely recommend checking them out on Christelle's site, because, you know, and it's affordable for any small business owner. So definitely well worth it.
I've actually got to say, that's the other thing that, again, because connection is a huge value for me. Clarity for you to understand where you're spending your budget, but connection in an impact in what you're doing. I've ended up doing so many more content planning sessions because, like you said, you have all of the ideas of, I kind of like know what to post, but how am I going to do it in a way that actually engages? And coming up with some of the ideas and a bit more creativity around that. You know, you end up doing sessions on that. So again, that connection is really key if that's what you're looking for in your business.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cold now, but
I know we're both with yellow mugs as well. Well, actually, no, mine's green. Sorry.
Excellent. Oh, well, thank you, Christelle, for sharing that with us. It was really great to interview you for a change and listen to all your wisdom and insights. Thank you very much to all of you guys out there listening. And we'll catch you same time next week. I think we've got a guest on.
We do. I'm looking forward to this one. So yes, we'll be announcing that shortly. So yes, looking forward to it. Yeah. Catch you next week. Thank you so much for listening. Drop some questions in the comments and we'll get back. But otherwise, have a great rest of the week. Thank you.
Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.